In 1904, a dark chapter unfolded in Namibia under German colonial rule. Lothar von Trotha emerged as a ruthless military leader known for his uncompromising brutality. The Herero and Nama peoples faced a systematic campaign that would become known as genocide. Trotha believed that complete annihilation was the solution to rebellion. He issued orders that left no room for mercy or negotiation. Villages were burned, livestock destroyed, and water sources poisoned. Men, women, and children were driven into the desert with little hope of survival. Hunger, thirst, and disease became the invisible killers in the arid landscape. Trotha's tactics were designed to erase resistance entirely, leaving no trace of opposition. The Herero and Nama people were confronted not only with weapons, but with a deliberate plan to exterminate. His proclamation declared that anyone who resisted would be shot. Showing the chilling nature of his intent, the desert became a deadly trap. A natural executioner aided by human cruelty. Survivors were few, and those captured faced forced labor, starvation, and humiliation. Trotha's actions were guided by a belief in racial superiority and absolute control. The world witnessed, largely silently, the unfolding of one of the first genocides of the 20th century. Men who resisted were hunted relentlessly across unforgiving terrain. Women and children were driven from their homes, left with no shelter or sustenance. The Herero and Nama were punished collectively, punished for daring to defend their land. Trotha's campaign revealed the extreme consequences of colonial hubris and militarism. Genocide was not an accident. It was a calculated tool of domination and terror. The death toll grew daily as starvation, dehydration, and violence claimed thousands. Trotha pursued survivors with relentless determination, ensuring few could escape. His military strategy ignored any notion of mercy, humanitarian law, or basic ethics. The desert became a graveyard, silent and vast, bearing witness to the horrors committed. Bodies lay exposed, a haunting reminder of what happens when power goes unchecked. Survivors described suffering unimaginable, enduring hunger, thirst, and constant fear. Trotha's name became synonymous with cruelty and uncompromising authority. Letters, reports, and testimonies reveal the calculated planning behind the genocide. The Herero and Nama were stripped of dignity, freedom, and their connection to the land. Their displacement and loss were permanent, changing the fabric of their societies forever. Trotha believed annihilation would establish control and deter rebellion. Showing the deadly logic of oppression, his campaign illustrated how colonial ambitions could translate into systematic extermination. Every village destroyed, every water source poisoned, reinforced the horror of his strategy. Resistance became impossible in the face of calculated starvation and terror. Captives were sent to labor camps, where conditions mirrored those in the desert, brutal and inhumane. Disease spread unchecked, and survival depended on luck, strength, or favor. The genocide left deep psychological scars, not just physical wounds. Entire generations grew up with memories of loss, trauma, and displacement. The world slowly recognized the enormity of the atrocity, though often delayed. Trotha's orders exemplified a terrifying combination of military efficiency and moral blindness. The Herero were nearly wiped out, a people forced to watch their families perish. Nama suffered similar fates, their resistance crushed with calculated precision. Trotha's actions challenged the world's moral conscience, forcing questions about the cost of empire. Reports from missionaries, soldiers, and survivors provide chilling details of the atrocities. The genocide was one of the earliest instances where colonial power embraced extermination as policy. Trotha's belief in racial superiority fueled policies that disregarded the value of human life entirely. The Herero and Nama were not just defeated, they were targeted for total elimination. Survivors tell stories of walking for days without water, collapsing from exhaustion and hunger. Death became omnipresent, an unyielding companion for those who dared to resist. Trotha's legacy is a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked power and ideology. The desert, once home, became a prison, a battlefield, and a graveyard all at once. Families were torn apart, communities destroyed, and culture threatened with extinction. Trotha's campaign was designed to leave no survivors who could challenge German authority. The Genocide shocked the conscience of anyone who came to understand its scale. Hunger, thirst, and violence were tools used deliberately, not by accident or negligence. Trotha viewed extermination as a tactical choice, a way to impose order through fear. Witnesses reported the cruelty of forced marches, starvation, and executions. Soldiers followed orders without question, amplifying the impact of Trotha's policy. The genocide was a lesson in how ideology can justify the unthinkable. Trotha's campaign demonstrates that when power is absolute, morality can vanish entirely. Survival became a test of endurance. Against both the natural environment and human cruelty, those who escaped carried stories of unimaginable suffering, trauma, and loss. Children grew up orphaned, families broken, and culture threatened with extinction. Trotha's actions left a permanent scar on the land and on history itself. Generations remember the desert not as home, but as a place of horror and survival. The world's awareness was slow, but the human stories persisted, haunting records forever. Genocide is a stain not just on history, but on the human conscience. Trotha's name became synonymous with the consequences of arrogance and unchecked authority. The Herero and Nama survivors rebuilt lives, but the memory of destruction never faded. Every burned village and poisoned water source became a symbol of systemic cruelty. Trotha's campaign demonstrated that military might can be wielded without humanity. The death toll grew silently, recorded in the emptiness of desert graves. Survivors' testimonies reveal the psychological and physical torment endured daily. Genocide in Namibia was a deliberate plan. Showing the darkest side of colonial ambition, Trotha's actions erased lives, communities, and histories in a calculated campaign of terror. The lessons of this tragedy demand that humanity recognize the consequences of indifference. The desert fields still bear witness, silent and vast, to the horror of 1904. Humanity was nearly erased. And yet, traces of resilience survived through memory. Remembering these events ensures that the horror is not repeated. Trotha's name reminds us that power without conscience is devastating and absolute. The genocide challenges all who hear its story to confront the darkest capabilities of human behavior. Every life lost represents a failure of morality, justice, and empathy. Surviving families became living testaments to endurance amidst despair. Every story of loss echoes through generations, demanding remembrance. Trotha's methods demonstrate how ideology and prejudice can justify unimaginable atrocities. The Herero and Nama people's suffering teaches us about resilience and courage. Even in the face of annihilation, they maintain identity, culture, and hope. History remembers the cruelty, but also the humanity that endured against it. Learning from the past ensures that such acts of terror are not repeated. The desert still holds the silence of those who perished, a lasting memorial to human tragedy. Trotha's campaign is a reminder that systemic violence can persist under the guise of authority. Victims were punished not only for resistance, but for existing in their own land. The genocide of 1904 demonstrates the devastating power of unchecked military force. Memory and history are the only weapons against forgetting atrocities. Survivor stories bring the past to life, making it impossible to ignore. Humanity can be erased by policies, orders, and cruelty, but it can also be restored through memory. Trotha's actions are a warning about how ideology and power can destroy entire peoples. Namibia remembers, and the world must also never forget the lessons of 1904. The Herero and Nama survived, carrying the weight of history, trauma, and resilience. Lothar von Trotha's genocide stands as one of the darkest chapters of human history, a testament to cruelty and a reminder to uphold humanity above all.